Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our fourth class on the ISPD Online Classroom. Again, my name is Frank Donaldson, and these particular lessons today are going to be quite interesting. As we always like to do, let's start with a prayer. This is a prayer that we have used through the years, and once again, it is an excellent prayer using with your development team, volunteers, your core team, etc. But it certainly puts everything in perspective and allows us to see exactly what development is all about. So let us remember that we are in the holy presence of God. Dear Lord, many have been called for this work, few are chosen. We realize that this important ministry of Catholic school development can be both fulfilling and challenging. Please help us to learn that Catholic school development is not fundraising, but rather the way to invite and involve people in our Catholic school. Our goal in development is to build a sense of spiritual bonding, of community, of friendship and commitment. One result of achieving our goal will be financial support. Help me to overcome the notion that development is simply asking for money, and help me and others realize that Catholic school development is actually bringing people closer to you. Please let me learn that development is not a win-lose situation, that Catholic school development is really a process of bringing Christ to people and people to Christ. And please help me to learn that extending myself to others and inviting them to participate is not a weakness, but a strength. And please, Lord, let these efforts of ours be successful by blessing us and giving us the courage to tell our story of need, our story of success, with boldness, with conviction, with commitment, and with love. And as you can see, we call that the Catholic Development Prayer, one that we've used for many years and one that we really feel puts into focus everything that we're talking about. So as we move through this fourth lesson, once again recalling to mind that the book is dedicated to the memory of Dr. Michael Guyot. As we like to remind, there are some housekeeping. Please use, as many of you are now doing, the email address fedonaldson@ispd.com to respond or ask questions or whatever. And please make sure when you submit your homework assignments with any attachments, you please make sure your name and the name of your school is on those documents. At the end of today's presentation, there will be a survey. It's a one-question survey. Seeing that we will be 1/3 through the course for this year, just trying to get your take on ideas in regards to how it's going for you. So please make sure you stay on the line and fill in the survey and submit it, and that would be great to hear from you on that. Let's kind of recap, just to review. If you remember with Class 1, we started with fundamentals and philosophy and fundamentals, and we're still in that particular section of the book where we talked about the engagement of people, the involvement of people, the importance of the mission, vision, and core values. We talked about in this class number 2 the importance of leadership. We talked about building community through various communication tools. And then in class 3, at the last time in July, we talked about moving from fundraising to true Catholic development. And once again, believing in the value of a customer service culture. It was really interesting as we looked at the homework assignments that came out of this, and the many ideas and thoughts and everything of this nature that came from those homework assignments were rather interesting not in terms of necessarily of my perspective, but interesting for you. I had so many people that did the chart that wrote and sent messages basically saying this has proved such an eye-opener. Really interesting, the number of people taking this class that went back to their principal and or pastor and or others at the school with the TFS test on customer service and some of the comments that were made in regards to that. And so Even had one coming from Jason, who produced the video at the last workshop, that titled his email here this morning as that my dog didn't eat my homework, but the first day of school did. So we have several people that obviously homework came in late, and in some cases homework won't come in until the next few days. And in fact, we probably have a dozen folks that are going to, because of school starting, are unable to join us this morning. However, they will be able to take advantage of the YouTube video link that we will send out. As we move through the 1/3 mark, one of the things we'll be doing after today's class is really taking a look at who is following along with this process and submitting homework assignments and the like. I think it's important because what we have seen thus far in this presentation and in these classes, we have certainly seen a great deal of affirmation of what we're teaching, but more importantly, we feel that those folks that are keeping up with the classes, taking the classes, doing the homework for the classes, it is really, really beneficial. And so we really encourage that so strongly. I know we have a few people that are just taking the classes and that's it, but I really encourage as much as possible to take a look at all this. You all have now the 3 PowerPoints. You know what the homework assignments are, and you may be thinking to yourself, well, gosh, I don't need to do homework assignment 1 or 2 or whatever, and we're already into the 4th lesson class. You know, I would really encourage you to do it. I cannot believe the number of people that have indicated how helpful this is in terms of moving this along. It makes it more than just a webinar. It really allows that continuity. It allows that follow-up. It allows that reinforcement. It allows that putting things into action. So with those thoughts in mind, let's start with Lesson 7. And as we take a look at Lesson 7, this is the one that is always in the book, is the most interesting one. Most interesting because we find over and over again this lesson is extremely challenging. But let's approach it from a way that I think I can set this up where you won't turn off your computer once I get started. If we look at the main challenges that Catholic schools face all across the country, this past week, a couple of weeks, I'm working with Catholic schools in Baltimore and Indianapolis and Cincinnati and Providence, Rhode Island, and here in New Orleans. And as I look at the challenges that Catholic schools are facing, lack of people involvement, especially alumni, enrollment challenges, the cost of running Catholic schools so we don't keep raising our tuition to become schools just for the elite, leadership across the board, not just in terms of principal, pastor, president, development director, assistant principal, and the like, but our lay leadership, our changing demographics, the facility needs that continue to evolve in Catholic schools, the lack of customer service and people engagement service. This becomes a really key piece. As you move on down the line, it was really interesting. Several people who wrote about this and sent it in as their homework said when we sat down with the administrative team and took the TFS test on customer service, people were actually shocked that they were not doing more in this arena. And then the whole idea of boss management versus team management. And then the other challenge is the rule of insanity. And I'm sure we all know what that is. When you always approach a problem the same way, you always end up in the same place. Or as the quote says, insanity is thinking that we are going to expect different results when we keep doing the same things over and over and over and over again. So if these are the challenges, and these are the ones we're seeing, obviously there are others, but these are the main ones we're seeing. I paid close attention to this over the last couple of weeks as we work with some of our Catholic schools and parishes and really begin to plug in and see how valid these challenges still are. If we look at these challenges, we realize that many Catholic schools have sought to face these challenges, and they've done it through president-principal structures and enrollment management innovations and strategic planning efforts and setting up advancement development offices and personnel. Some have even, because of the financial piece, added on more fundraisers. We've had, just this week, I had a call 3 days ago of several schools that are looking at merging, and could we help them with the strategic planning. And so in some cases, mergers are taking place. Capital campaigns really interesting in capital campaigns. We're working with 6 of them right now, and every single one of those capital campaigns has an endowment component. Really interesting. Used to be back when I started with all of this 26 years ago, all capital campaigns were bricks and mortar. And now we're finding more and more it is not only bricks and mortar, but it is also dealing with how do we grow, how do we build the endowment. And of course, by building the endowment, usually that endowment is for tuition assistance or the endowment to help with keeping tuition down. And so we find that piece as ways to face these challenges. New governance and operational models, business partnerships, school systems, where 3 or 4 schools maybe had been separate, and now they're coming together and forming a system, a pre-K through 12 system. Obviously, new vision in terms of where they're going with the future of the school and being able to articulate that, better branding, marketing, and more volunteer lay leadership involvement. So as we look at the challenges, as we look at the ways that Catholic schools are seeking to solve these challenges, one of the things that we have often talked about, and we've been talking about this for the past 10 years, not only have we talked about it, but we actually have had a number of schools that have taken this on, and the results have been quite remarkable. The hardest part is convincing people that this is a step that needs to be taken. And so I'm hoping in this online class that I can convince some of you that the step we're going to talk about today, one of the things we'll talk about today, is so important to the future of your Catholic school. And so if we took this to another level, I always say when I introduce what I'm going to introduce, I usually get 3 responses. Interesting. Yeah, right. You are out of your mind. That's usually the responses that I get. So what I'm going to ask you to do for the next 15 minutes, probably take 15 minutes. Back when I was growing up, and I've done this before, back when I was growing up, there was a little magic slate we used to have with a little red wooden pencil. And we could write on that magic slate and write on it and draw on it and do all kind of things on it. And when we wanted to erase what was on the slate, we would simply lift that little sheet up, little plastic sheet, and it would erase everything. And then we could start all over again. Well, for the next 15 minutes, I'm going to ask you to lift up your magic slate. I'm going to ask you to lift up that sheet in your magic slate and just forget about any roadblocks that you would put up to what I'm getting ready to say. Just simply keep an open mind, absorb, and take a look in terms of what we're trying to say. Logistics and all, we get. Cost, we get. Personnel, we get. We understand all that. But just keep the magic slate clean for 10 or 15 minutes. Because here's what we believe here at ISPD. In order for Catholic schools to prevail and meet these challenges we just got finished talking about, we've got to figure out ways and means and processes and innovations for our school leaders. And by school leaders, I not only mean administration, but faculty and staff and parent leaders, parish leaders, alumni leaders, but for school leaders to meet with every family one-on-one at least once per year for a lengthy conversation in their home or on the school site, eyeball to eyeball. So if your magic slate is clean now, you're not saying, interesting, yeah, right, you're out of your mind. So if your magic slate is clean, we're in good shape. If it's not, then you're right there at that third bullet point that's on the slide right now. Let's go further. If we really believe in what we've been talking about these first 3 lessons about people engagement, then we know that the key to it all is relationship building. It's what it's all about. And there's no hidden agendas. And there's no guarded kingdoms. And there's no, it is a level playing field where we really are seeking to engage people into the life of our Catholic school. If we believe that, if we say that that is the route that we need to take, then obviously it becomes super important for us to realize that this is a piece that is very innovative, very creative, but let's listen. As we said, they're givens. We understand the time, we understand the personnel, the schedule, the calendar, the cost. And we're also saying that we're not saying to go do this tomorrow. It can be done in stages, and it does not have to be done overnight. I think that's important. But here is what we're talking about. Let us say that over the next year, over the 16-17 school year, you were able to set up in your Catholic school 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever teams of 2 each. A little biblical reference in terms of going out 2 by 2. And perhaps each team would be responsible for 5 or 10 families. In schools that have done this, we've seen principal and faculty member, 2 board members, 2 faculty members, 2 parent leaders, 2 alum leaders, faculty member and a parent leader. And these teams then obviously would be well selected, well trained, and they can take a look at how they can visit. And so what they would discuss and share with a family, after that family has been invited, after this has been announced, after the letters have gone out from the principal, after this has been promoted, after this has been marketed, after this has been branded, okay, after this has been done, all in advance. So that's why we're saying 2016-17, you may take the whole year to look at this. But let's say a team was sitting down with a family. They could discuss where the school's going. All this would have been covered in training. All this would have been covered in different type of scenarios where they would role play. They could talk about the progress of the children as students in the school and what some of the outstanding achievements are. They can talk about changes that will be upcoming. They can talk about how the school operates in terms of its governance and leadership. They can talk about ways of engaging and involving that family members could possibly enjoy. They could talk about the family's gifts in terms of the 3 gifts of prayer, of involvement. They could talk about ways that the family could become involved, obviously, with tuition and fees and what the word GAP means and why. They could talk about in-kind giving, where families could volunteer. They could talk about the annual appeal and why it's so important. They could talk about fundraising events and why. They could even talk about ways that family could generate financial resources for the school. In other words, they could talk about in that first half hour, 20 to 30 minutes, they could talk about. And I'm not saying to do all of this. I'm just saying what teams could talk about. The first half of the conversation is all about the school and the fact that we're building a team. We're building a relationship. But the key is once the school, that team, has talked about this, then they're closing their book. They're closing their book and putting it down and saying, Mr. and Ms. Johnson, as we take a look at working with you, as we take a look at you as a family, as our school family, we take a look at the school and its mission, we take a look at continuing to build this relationship with you, we take a look at many ways. We'd like to discuss and like to hear from you, what can we do that will make you and your family consider a relationship with our school that could possibly last a lifetime? What are your needs? How can we help you meet those needs? And And what gifts would you enjoy sharing at the school? And in terms of your child or children's experience, how can we help you make this a great one? Now, if your magic slate is clean, you're sitting there thinking, possibly, because I've heard this before, my goodness, look at these opportunities. If your magic slate is not clean, you've already shut this down. You've said, nope, no time, don't have the personnel, be too hard to difficult to organize, we have to worry about the schedule, we never get it on the calendar, etc. But I go back to that insanity rule. I go back to that insanity. Insanity is approaching something the same way and expecting the results to be different. We've long talked about enrollment management. It's the biggest challenge that faces most Catholic schools across the country, that and money. Can you imagine if you, in some way, implemented this into your Catholic school? And once again, this is a challenge. There are basic tenets here that we would want to throw out. We're encouraging you to begin some internal discussions this year about this in your school. Possibly, as you look at the 17-18 school year, you may be able to begin with this in June or July or August, with new families who would be coming in 17-18. Pre-K families, first grade families, new ninth grade family. The goal would be over time to visit with every family once per year in some way, shape, or form in terms of building a relationship. And one-on-one is the only way to do that. I've heard many principals tell me, and I think it's fantastic. In fact, you'll see it at a later slide. Well, we have principal coffee meetings in which we have 8, 10, moms or dads and or whatever. I think that's wonderful. I mean, I think it's great. But in those sessions, you cannot discuss that family's needs. You cannot build a one-on-one relationship between the school representatives and that family. That cannot be done. And so as we look at this, let's say you implemented something like this. Let's just say that. Obvious PR throughout the community. Do you realize what this school is doing? Is the buzz? They're taking the time to get to know everyone. They really are engaging us. I mean, and you become small. I don't care what your size, whether you are sitting there with 1,000 students or 100 students. You become small by building your faith community one by one. And this could become your new norm. This could become a way that changes that culture into more sense of belonging. And of course, in those conversations, the team members from the school would need to record the responses. They may hear things that need to go back to the guidance counselor, need to go back to the principal, and of course, honoring the confidentiality. And if somebody needs something and the team leaders come back, it's so important to respond in terms of answers, in terms of what is needed. As we look at this, it's a new way of operating. The contacts, the resources, the relationships, the connections, they have so much potential. Because we have always said, and I think I possibly said this in the first class, we have always said that most Catholic schools don't really know the majority of their parents. And maybe we know 15 or 20%. And you may say, oh, no, that's not right. We know our parents. But what I'm talking about is knowing the parents and knowing their needs, knowing their dreams, knowing their wishes, knowing their resources, knowing what their gifts are, their talents, their expertise, their connections, knowing what they enjoy doing. We always put up things at the beginning of the school year, sign up for this if you're interested. But we never ask, what are you interested in? And what gifts and talents do you want to share? It is extremely interesting as we take a look at this approach. I introduced this at a workshop about a year ago. And at that workshop, there were about 40 people at the workshop. I had one person call me the next day. And she said, I am so intrigued by this that we're going to figure out a way to make this happen. I'm not going to say I'm going to do it this week or this month or even this semester, but we're going to do something about it. And lo and behold, about 2 months ago, I received a call from her. It was an email, rather. And she said, we have implemented this with our new families. You would not believe the impact that this has had on changing the culture of our school. So as we look at this, there are different ways that this can be approached. I've shared with you a way that I thought was good. But if we go back to the challenges that Catholic schools face, okay, and see what this would do on it. We talked about the challenge of enrollment. Well, with what we're talking about, in these visits, you could get referrals, and it's a built-in retention activity. We talked about the challenge of cost. You would be able to explain and invite participation in revenue-producing vehicles. We talked about leadership, and these visits would surface new volunteer leaders. We talked about demographics, and the teams would learn so much about that area, the neighborhood, and other families. We talked about facilities, and this could be part of the school's conversation in terms of needs. We talked about customer service and people engagement. This is a perfect example of how that can happen. We talked about boss management versus team management, and this shows a collaborative style, a win-win relationship building that is being proposed. And we referred to the rule of insanity, doing the same things over and over again. I can guarantee you there are not many Catholic schools doing this. So as we look at it, there are other relationship building processes. We have schools that we work with and in our workshops and consulting, and once again, they are parent-to-parent buddy systems work well, but that's parent-to-parent. That's relationship building between parents. I've often said, and some of you have heard me talk about this, that the grade level connect groups, why would you not have a group? Let's say you had a 4th grade class and you had 30 families. Why would you not have quite possibly 2 or 3 connect groups where you have these families that are connected, and quite possibly they meet once a month, once every other month in each other's homes, and share their successes and share their ideas, and a person from the school could be invited. Connect groups. One of the best books that I've ever read. In fact, I'll be in Detroit on Monday and Tuesday, and we'll be talking about this book because it's all part of the new evangelization. But if you haven't read the book, I really encourage you. You can download a copy. It's by Father James Mallon, M-A-L-L-O-N, and it's called Divine Renovation, Moving from Maintenance to Mission. And in it, he talks about connect groups for parishes. And this is one of the things we encourage heavily on the parish side. Small faith communities, it's the same concept. But in Catholic schools, why could we not do connect groups? Why could we not take a 300 family school and realizing that's a lot of people and is large to a certain extent and make that small? So Divine Renovation, Bringing Your Parish from Maintenance to Mission by Father James Mallon. And although it deals with parish life, it does talk about principles and ideas that are quite fascinating. He's a Canadian priest. And why could we not apply this to Catholic schools? And of course, there is what I mentioned earlier, parent-principal coffee gatherings. I've worked with several schools that encourage them, what if you did a parent-principal board faculty retreat? And maybe there were several retreats a year, overnight retreat, or an all-day retreat where the night didn't have to do the overnight. Look at the words at the top. Build relationships with your school families. Build relationships with your school families. It doesn't say fundraise with your school families. It says build relationships with your school families. Belonging leads to believing. That's what Lesson 7 is really all about. And those schools that get it become very successful in regards to moving this forward. It's fascinating if we do it right. But I guarantee you it is a shift in culture. I guarantee you there is a great deal of thought and resistance that comes about when you introduce things like this. But if we believe and don't just pay lip service to building relationships, these are ways that we have seen that can work. These are ways that will really turn your school culture upside down, because you're moving into a new modus operandi, a way that the board, the administration, the faculty, the staff, parent leaders, parish leaders, if you're in that configuration, are totally impacted by this way. So once again, I encourage you to take a look at it. I encourage you to take a look and see what can be done. Let's visit something. In our last lesson last month, we talked about the elements of a customer service culture. And we said those elements are team management, polite, welcoming, and engaging culture, strong belief in and demonstration of belonging, collaborative vision and direction, open door policies, transparency and trustfulness, consistently seeking input through many vehicles, and that will be our September class, one of the lessons there, personal relationship building fostered and promoted and demonstrated by school leaders, quality-looking campus that projects the feel of togetherness, a culture built around the 3 C's, good communication, collaboration, and creativity. As you look at these bullet points, these 10 bullet points, what we've just got finished talking about the last 30 minutes, except for one of them with the facilities, this is exactly what we're talking about in terms of a customer service culture. It's fascinating. As we move now to Lesson 8, we talk about the value of faculty and staff and board involvement. There's that word again, isn't it? Involvement in development and advancement. The same themes are running through every lesson. People engagement, involvement, relationship building. Now, the biggest challenge we have with all of this is that, and I've written a lot about this, some newsletters I've written called the Big Hat and the Little Hat, and the others I've written about Guarded Kingdoms. This is what challenges this philosophy. This is what challenges this way of thinking, this modus operandi. What challenges all of this is that in many Catholic schools, there are walls that are up. There are kingdoms that are guarded. And what we're talking about in this book as one of the major themes is having those walls come crumbling down. What we're talking about is the ability to reach out and engage people in an open, honest way and treat everyone on a level playing field. This is indeed, in many Catholic schools, a change, because we've always done it a certain way. And so as we talk about people engagement, and if we're going to move in that direction, then we have to make sure that everyone's on the same page. The two groups, obviously, that become important with this is obviously the faculty and the staff. I've often said that the most important group of people to a Catholic school development effort is your faculty and staff. We talked about this earlier, because happy, motivated faculty and staff lead to happy, motivated students, happy, motivated parents, happy, motivated people in the community. So they're very important. And it's important that development personnel get to know faculty and staff. And it's important that faculty and staff understand development. You know, there are Catholic schools that have done a really good job of either monthly or every other month just producing word processing, a little one-page front and back, or just one-page front, but it's never more than one sheet of paper, a little development update. A little development update that basically says, hey, this is what's going on in development this month, or this is what's going on in advancement this month, or this is what's going on in advancement for these 2 months. In other words, this little communication piece keeps people up to date. There are other ways that faculty and staff, you can get to know the faculty and staff, depending on your configuration. But I am working with some schools where the advancement team invites 2 or 3 faculty members to come in once a week. And they have a little box lunch for them, and they sit around and they talk about what they're doing, meaning the faculty and staff member talk about what they're doing, and the advancement officer or officers talks about what she or he is doing. Just getting to know one another, relationship building. It's not operating in a vacuum. You don't hear the comments, oh, I'd like to have her job. She comes in at 10 o'clock in the morning. Little do people realize she, quote unquote, was out the night before till 9 o'clock and worked on the weekends. But the point is, building that relationship with faculty and staff becomes really key. And faculty and staff can get involved, if they want, in many areas of development. A couple of weeks ago, with one of the schools we're working, I had an opportunity to present the whole idea of advancement and development to the faculty and staff. Very receptive and great group of people. And basically here was, I made some suggestions at Mount Carmel Academy. Continue to be the very best you can be. As we said, happy, motivated faculty, staff members lead to happy, motivated students, which leads to happy, motivated parents and families, which leads to wonderful image and reputation in the community. We talked about other suggestions. Continue to invite all to belong, encouraging openness to Christ in all events of daily living, part of the school's mission. Can help identify and suggest to the advancement team here at the school, people who can make a difference, and resources the school should consider. Maybe that teacher meets a parent or meets someone that quite possibly would be great in a given area. Maybe they're a science teacher and meet someone that has great resources in terms of leading the school to take a look at different innovations and ideas in that field. Sharing successes and excitement, the magic, quote unquote, of your ministry. Continuing to be an ambassador for the school. And in number 4, in sharing your successes, being able to let whoever is involved with the newsletters and the e-newsletters and the website and all that, being able to get that out there, being able to share that. And faculty and staff members can be a core team member. We're going to talk about that the next lesson. They can help with marketing. They can make open house a huge success. They can work on the new strategic plan. They can work with new outreach to school parents. They can do all kinds of things. Once again, they are so key. And all of these things that are here, except for number 6, don't take any time at all. Don't take any time at all. It's a mindset. And so that becomes important as we take a look at it. And then finally, we invited the faculty there to name their top 5 selling points. And the response we got was outstanding. Because it's interesting to see what the faculty and staff is willing to quote unquote sell, what they're willing to market. And so once again, these are just suggestions. Very important as you take a look at this to be able to invite the faculty and the staff to be part of it. In terms of this, we also realize that the board is important. Now, each school has a different governance structure. In the diocesan-owned high schools and in the parish, in the parochial schools, religious community-owned schools, private schools, Catholic schools, the governance is different. And so whatever that configuration is, maybe it's a parent advisory council, whatever you're talking about in terms of the board, one of the questions we always ask is, how is the board being utilized? How is the board being invited to be part of development and advancement? And Dr. Regina Haney, who is one of our adjunct associates here, Dr. Haney and Dr. Eric Goldschmidt, our vice president, are working right now together in the Diocese of Charleston, South Carolina, with a long-range strategic plan for the entire diocese. A hugely successful process. They're into their second year of implementation. But Dr. Haney, Regina and I, back a couple of years ago, came up with 5 major points in regards to board members in the school's development efforts. And here they are. Seek to understand that development is not just about raising money. Very important for board members to realize that. You know, development directors, and we'll talk about this in a later chapter, but I'll bring it up now. Most development directors in Catholic schools, you know, they usually stay at a Catholic school for 2 or 3 years, and then they move on. And sometimes the reasons for that is because of lack of understanding of what development really is, and on the part of the administration as well as on the part of the board. And so sometimes you get that whole idea that the board, all they think about in some cases is how much money did you raise, how much money did you raise, how much money did you raise. There's so much more involved in development. And so being able to educate the board becomes really key. And so it's important that the board understands that. It's also important that the board works with the school leaders to build this culture of belonging. You know, really build that culture that's going to become so important. You know, also roll up your sleeves and work with the development efforts. Really, really important. Really important. And so as we put together core teams and steering committees and the like, we are working with, just started working this month with Archbishop Moeller High School up in Cincinnati. And we're in the process of putting together a steering committee for a strategic planning process and making sure that we have good representation from faculty and staff, and good representation from the board, and good representation, you know, from parents and alums and past parents and community members. Really important that the board is invited, you know, to do something more than just offer advice. Get involved. Get involved. Make sure the school has a vision and a plan. That becomes important. As a board member, I want to make sure there is a vision and there's a plan for the future, because that's what I need to talk about. And we also encourage for board members to be givers and getters. Giving of their time, their prayer, their service, and financial resources. And getting from others and inviting them to do the same. So as we look at these 5 areas of board involvement, I think it's important we realize that the board, as well as the faculty and staff, become really important to your development and advancement efforts. Extremely important. Please, please don't let your development advancement efforts be developed and created and processed and evolved in a vacuum. Development in its purest form develops a Catholic school, just like advancement advances a Catholic school. And in its purest form, it is always inclusive. Inclusive, not exclusive. Really important as we take a look at it. So as we look at these 2 lessons, as we talk about building relationships, as we talk about the role of the board and the role of the faculty, we've referenced something over the last several lessons that, and I talked about it at the last class in July, and that is the development core team. The development or advancement core team is a group of 15 to 18 people that work very closely with a Catholic school's development advancement efforts. They can lighten the burden. They can help implement, and that's 80% of what they do. This is not the marketing team. This is a core team that works with the entire development/advancement efforts of your school. They should see the big picture. They should see that the Catholic school development and advancement has basically those 6 areas we talk about, that constituent relations, that whole idea of enrollment management, of alumni involvement, of fund, F-U-N-D, fund development, which means annual fund, capital campaign, plan giving, major donor work, communications, which includes the PR, the marketing, and the communications, and then the fundraising and friend-raising events. Those are the 6 areas of Catholic school advancement, development. The core team works with you and can work with you in all of those areas. And they become important. And so as you take a look at the core team, who should be on it? This is a group of people that should represent your school. These are faculty and staff members, 1 or 2 or 3 of them. These are board members, 1 or 2 or 3 of them. These are parents, leaders, alumni leaders, possibly past parent leaders. These are quite possibly people who support the school financially and as leaders. But they're roll-up-your-sleeve workers now. That needs to be understood. They're not people that are just invited to come in and offer advice. They're going to help you implement. They're going to help you implement that annual appeal. They're going to help you implement that open house. They're going to help you implement alumni involvement activities. They're going to help you implement all kinds of things that you decide that you want to focus on in 16-17 school year and beyond. It is a key group, and I've always been amazed at the number of schools that shy away from it. Instead, 1 or 2 or 3 people control everything, and they're not open to bringing in a group like this to work with them. And so in September, on our online class, we're going to be dealing with a couple of very weighty subjects, this being one of them. But it is important that we look at it and really delve into that whole idea of the core team. And then the other lesson we'll be looking at is seeking input from your various constituents. And so for homework, because this is the beginning of the school year, I've kept the homework kind of light, but we're asking you to make a selection from one of the following. Number 1, to please write a 1 to 2 paragraph piece where you point out 1 or 2 new and innovative things that you did or will do as you usher in this new 2016-17 school year. As we all know, and because we work in the South as well as the Midwest as well as the East Coast, schools start at different times of the year. And some of you may be able to point out things that you have done in the last few weeks that are very creative and innovative. And some of you could point out things that you're planning on doing, or because the homework is not going to be due until the week before the next lesson, then you could certainly do that. So write a 1 to 2 paragraph piece where you point out those 1 or 2 innovative ideas that you have ushered in. Write, number 2, a 1 or 2 paragraph piece where you describe how you can implement this one-on-one relationship building process into the culture of your Catholic school. As you kept your magic slate clean in the first half of the class, how can you implement this? And number 3, through conversation and collaboration, I'd like for you to write down the names of the 20 people in a 1-sentence bio description who would make outstanding development core team members. I'm not asking you to send me the names of the 20 people. What I'm asking you is that when you have completed this, to simply email me and say, Frank, we have the names of the 20 people with a brief bio description of each one that we would like to invite to be part of our core team. That's all this homework assignment is. Obviously, wouldn't know the names of the people that you're talking about and wouldn't even know what to do with them. Me, I'm talking about. But through conversation and collaboration, conversation with whom? Quite possibly your principal, quite possibly your development director, quite possibly your pastor, quite possibly your team, your leadership team at the school. Writing down, identifying 20 people who represent faculty and staff and board and parents and alums and past parents. Writing down those names with a one-sentence bio, one little brief description, so you know when you look at it all, you can look at it and say, okay, how well represented are we? Who would make outstanding development core team members? You don't want this to be a dad's club. You don't want this to be a mom's club. You want this to be well represented. Well represented. Okay? And so as we look at those three, shouldn't take you too long. The third one will take a little bit, but once again, you're going to be able to use that. That's a lesson that that's a homework assignment you're going to be able to kick right on in with, and that should definitely be exciting. So I do want to point out something to you. Because of a change in my calendar and schedule, I've had to change the date, and I'll be sending this out, of our next class. And so I had to switch it to Wednesday, September 28th at 10 a.m. I will be sending this out to everyone as a reminder, but I did want to call this to your attention. I am just unable to be in a place on that Monday we were supposed to have it. I will actually be in flight somewhere. And so I'm unable to offer it then, but certainly we'll be able to do it. And I put it toward the end of the month of September because I feel with all the new back-to-school things and getting settled, this will be something where we can really take a look at things after that first 4 to 6 weeks of school have kicked in. But in that, we will jump on to Lesson 9, which will talk about the core team. It's reasoning and value, roles and responsibilities, and how do you integrate this into the school's development efforts. Lesson 10, we'll talk about seeking input from your constituents on a consistent basis, and we'll go into what we mean by input sessions, the ultimate questions survey, and I'll give you samples of those from other schools, and the cup of coffee, pick your brain meeting. And I want to talk about that one because this is a wonderful way to engage people. So as we look at wrapping up today's lesson, a couple of things, I should say a couple more things before you leave. Just wanted to let you know that I've been invited to present in St. Louis at the NCA convention in 2017. And basically, this will be the topic, 25 lessons learned. If any of you are planning on going to that convention, I would love to be able to maybe host something where we can get together. And maybe we can host a luncheon or a breakfast or a dinner and just talk about. We will be almost through the entire class, but if you should be going, that would be great. And right before this webinar, this morning, I was speaking with Andrea Kopp at NCEA, and they have invited me to present an NCEA webinar, and that's going to be on Tuesday, March 14th at 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. And it will be around this topic, 25 lessons. I'm obviously not going to do all 25, but just wanted to let you know that in case you wanted to send that out to anyone. NCA will be promoting it, but it's going to be on Tuesday, March 14th at 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. It'll be hosted by NCEA, and it will be one of their webinars in their series. And then once again, I'll be speaking at one of the sessions at the NCA convention in St. Louis in 2017. And if you would be going, like I said, if you guys sometimes between the end of now and the end of the calendar year could let me know, we'll see if we have enough people, and maybe we can grab a place around the convention center and maybe have a little reception and just put a face to a name and a name to a face, and I think it would be great. Next is we have finalized with the University of Dayton that those people, you yourself as students, if you complete the full course this year with the homework assignments, that we are going to count that as 20 hours of credit, and you will get a certificate as well as 2 CEU credits from the University of Dayton by completing this course. We finalized that within the last month with the UD, and we'll continue as we move forward to offer certification, and we also offer the University of Dayton will offer the CEUs, and that'll be 1 CEU per 10 hours of instruction, and obviously in terms of these 12 lessons and the homework assignments should add up to 20 hours. And so therefore we should be able to award 2 CEUs, which along with a certificate from UD and ISPD that you have completed the full class. And then really interesting, glad that you got on board with this, because as we move to 17 and 18, obviously it's going to take a different form, and probably will be a cost factor involved with it. So just wanted to let you know that. And then we hope to see you on Wednesday, September 28th. There will be a survey that will pop up here in just a few minutes. And with that in mind, I think it would be good that we look at this as being a piece that we will send out in regards to new date and time of Wednesday, September 28th. Had a couple of people just typed in, I don't know when it was, that you had lost the audio, but then right back and came back and said, no, we've recaptured it again. So hopefully that's not been a problem. If it has, once again, we'll be sending out the YouTube link here within the next few days. And please stay on the line, answer the survey, and please remember the homework assignments, and enjoying hearing from so many of you as you move forward with all of this. And we look forward to a wonderful school year, as well as look forward to hearing more from you as you move forward with these homework assignments and making all this come alive. So, best wishes as you begin the 2016-17 school year, and look forward to seeing you again on Wednesday, September 28th at 10 a.m. 1 or 2 questions did come up. Let's see if we can answer them before we let you go. Our school is trying to create a mentor family, liaison family program for the past 2 years. Each year it fizzles after the first month or so. Use suggestions how to keep this afloat to the end of the year. Our families seem to need guidance on what to say to their new family. Yes, I will be emailing the slides again. The whole key, once again, with that question in regards to this, the whole key is the preparation. We're strong believers in that PDSA cycle of plan, do, study, adjust. And so the real key is being able to get down exactly on paper what you want to have families talk about, what topics you want them to mention, and then being able to work out each month in terms of a touch-base phone call or a touch-base meeting, what it is you want them to delve into. And you need to put it on a month-to-month basis. It begins with an initial conversation and those 5 or 6 points you want that buddy family to talk about. Also questions you want that buddy family to ask those other families to give you, and then each month work out exactly what it is you want that person who is going to be the buddy, you want them to be able to ask or once again share with that particular family. But it has to be worked out. There's got to be good training, and it's got to be on paper, and those buddy families then need to know exactly what they're going to be doing from month to month, what things to articulate and to emphasize, and what 1, 2, or 3 questions to ask. If you did it that way, I have once again have many schools that do this, and that's exactly how they are doing this. Just curious how many people are taking this course now. Well, we started with 125, and as of this past week, as we took a look at everyone that is still on board, we have right at 95 right now. So we've had about 30 people that have dropped, and most all the time it's because of that one factor, time. And as you know, we're not letting people skip around. in terms of taking one and skipping 3 months and coming back to the other. We are giving excused absence. There are about a dozen people today that were excused from the class because of different things going on in their school. One called right before the webinar today, before the class today, and said because they are in Indiana and they are unable, their electricity is shot because of all the storms there, they're unable to even get on the internet. So please stay on board, answer the questions, and we look forward to the next session. And thank you for sticking with it. Hopefully this is being beneficial to you as we move forward. Hope you have a great weekend, and let us hear from you. Thank you.